Hello, and welcome to the Boomer Mill podcast. This week, we'll be talking about how the cultural and moral values have changed from the silent generation to Generation Alpha.
My name is Jonathan, and I'm a boomer.
And my name is Michelle, and I'm a millennial, and together, we're the Boomer Mill. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Boomer Mill podcast. I'm Michelle, your millennial host, and here with me, as always, is my awesome boomer husband, Jonathan. If you're joining us from your favorite podcast platform and you would like to see our faces, please follow us on YouTube or Meta. We are at the Boomer Mill, and please like, share, and subscribe as we are a brand new channel, and we would love your support. If you'd like to know more about what we do or have an idea for the next show, please visit us at www.theboomermill.live, and that link is in the description.
Hey there, folks. Today we're diving deep into how cultural and moral values have shifted from the silent generation to Gen Alpha. It's a fascinating journey through time, and we're going to break it down for you generation by generation. We're here to bridge the generational gaps one conversation at a time, so please let us know your thoughts in the comments.
We'll also be sharing our own personal stories, reflecting how our value systems have changed and evolved, and look ahead at what is on the horizon for the Gen Alphas, especially as our global landscape changes.
The silent generation, born between 1928 and 1945, was deeply influenced by the economic hardships of the Great Depression and World War II. These events instilled in them a strong work ethic, a deep respect for authority, and a commitment to community and family. A 2015 Pew Research study found that over 70% of the silent generation placed a high value on traditional family roles and responsibilities, reflecting their prioritization of stability and order. We found a comedic clip for you. Take a look.
It was called the silent generation. These people were born between the 1920s and 1940s. They're called the silent generation because when they were children, they were to be seen and not heard. These are people like my in-laws who are in their 90s. And these are the people that still cook with lard and are concerned about safety around a microwave oven. I love my in-laws. They've been married for 63 years. And apparently, if you've been married that long, you no longer have the ability to hear the sound of the other person's voice.
So just as you heard, religious values played a significant role in reshaping their moral compass, as 82% of the silent generation identified as Christian, according to a 2014 Pew Research study. Now, this generation largely adhered to conventional norms around marriage, with the average age of marriage in the 1950s being 20 for women and 23 for men, much younger than later generations.
The silent generation also valued civic duty with high participation in institutions like the military and government. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, 47% of men from this generation served in the military, demonstrating their strong sense of national duty.
So in summary, silent generation's values were characterized by a focus on hard work, authority, traditional family structures, and community. These were all shaped by challenges in their formative years. Baby boomers were born between 1946 and 1964, and they're often referred to as the me generation due to their focus on individual rights and self-expression. So growing up in the post-World War II economic boom, they experienced unprecedented prosperity, which fueled their confidence and sense of entitlement. The 1960s marked a cultural revolution, with boomers playing a pivotal role in movements like civil rights, feminism, and environmentalism. A 2019 Pew Research study found that 76% of boomers supported the civil rights movement, reflecting their commitment to social change.
The sexual revolution of the 1960s and 70s also challenged traditional norms around marriage and sexuality, which led to a more liberal approach to these issues. By the 1970s, the divorce rate had doubled from the 1950s, and the average age of marriage began to rise, reflecting a shift in social values.
Yes, boomers were instrumental in questioning authority driven by events like the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal. This era saw a decline in trust in government, with only 36% of boomers expressing high confidence in federal institutions by the late 1970s, according to the Gallup.
Baby boomers laid the groundwork for future generations with their emphasis on individualism, social change, and questioning authority. Our cultural values continue to influence social norms, particularly in areas of personal freedom and civil rights.
Unfortunately, not all boomers like Jonathan see the potential of the younger generations. Take a look.
The American economy hostage. They're holding it hostage, and they can at any time flood the market by selling all their stock, taking all the cash. Now, many people go, well, they're going to take it for medical emergencies, and they're going to take the cash, and whatever they're going to do with it, okay, they're going to like fund some nightmarish thing. It's like Pinky in the Brain with these people. Like they're going to take the cash out of the stock market so they can build a laser to zap the world. The way that they are going on now, refusing to sell these McMansions, they will not downsize, they will not give up their jobs.
So many millennials are complaining about their parents literally making fun of them for not having the lifestyle they had when they were younger. I personally believe that building a huge house and adding to it after becoming an empty nester is irresponsible if you have a family. And then to insist that your struggling adult children give you grandchildren on top of it is definitely not okay. I understand that they made the money and it's theirs to keep if they choose to. Just don't have kids or demand grandkids if your plan is to be independently wealthy and forget about them.
I agree completely. And like I said a few seconds ago, I'm a boomer. I've never had children, although I've been in 2 long-term relationships. I will say that there's a tremendous amount of social, familial, and personal peer pressure on having children. Ironically, many of my fellow boomers have admitted to me over the years that if they had it to do over, they might not have had as many kids or had kids at all.
Wow. So let's talk about Gen X. They were born between 1965 and 1980, and they are known for their skepticism and independence. Growing up during significant social and economic changes, including the sharp rise in divorce rates, many Gen Xers were latchkey kids, fostering a sense of self-reliance and adaptability. By the 1980s, nearly 50% of marriages had ended in divorce, shaping a generation that values practicality and resilience. They're also so self-reliant that many of us forget they exist. Take a look.
You millennials are so crazy. We're not millennials.
Damn right you're not, pipsqueak.
Ugh, you're so chuggy. Your slang sucks.
Okay, fetch.
See, you're also sensitive.
Okay, boomer.
Ah, don't you dare talk to me like that, you little runt.
And we're sensitive?
You know, you millennials need to go back to church.
Not a millennial. Does God pay off debt?
Oh, here come the excuses. You know, when I was a kid...
The Flintstones were your neighbors?
Don't be rude.
What up, guys? Check out this crazy boomer Karen. This is wild.
Who are you?
Gen X. When did you get here?
I've been here literally the entire time.
Really? I didn't even notice you.
Of course.
Son of a bitch.
What? Whoa. I thought he was dead.
Yeah. I need another drink.
Well, as the first generation to experience the digital age, Gen X became tech savvy, but also developed a healthy skepticism about technology and media. Their experiences with events like Watergate, the AIDS crisis, just deepened their mistrust of authority and their preference for individuality.
Culturally, Gen X played a key role in the rise of counterculture movements like the grunge scene in the 1990s. That was really big in the Seattle area, reflecting their disillusionment with the status quo. They were also more open to diversity in race, gender, and sexual orientation compared to the previous generations. In the workplace, they introduced a more informal, flexible, and results-oriented approach, contrasting with the rigid structures favored by boomers.
Gen Xers often delayed marriage and childbearing, prioritizing personal growth and career development. Their median age for first marriages rose significantly during their adulthood, and they embraced work-life balance over climbing the corporate ladder. Politically, they tend to be more moderate and pragmatic, often acting as a swing generation in elections.
In summary, Gen Xers value authenticity, diversity, and practicality, and that stems from their experiences growing up with a lot of uncertainty and change, making them a significant influence on today's workplace norms and cultural landscape.
Millennials, born between 1981 and 1996, are known for their progressive values, focusing on diversity, inclusivity, and social justice. A 2018 Pew Research study showed that 62% see racial and ethnic diversity as beneficial. Growing up with the internet, they have a global perspective and often question traditional institutions. The 2019 Deloitte survey found that 70% believe traditional business models are failing. So they tend to support ethical and socially impactful organizations. Take a look.
The standard narrative is basically this is the advice that the boomers have given us, our parents. Basically, get a job, buy a house, work until you're 65, and get a pension because, your job is secure. Just be loyal to the company and they will take care of you in your old age. And that is the standard narrative. And that is no longer true, especially for millennials. Like, we get called all the time for being lazy, for being entitled, and saying that our problems have been created by ourselves and they're not real problems. But if you actually look at it, back then, the boomers had a totally different set of circumstances, right? And the advice that they gave is absolutely outdated. You can no longer afford a house. And getting a job doesn't mean you can actually keep it until you're 65. And pensions are almost extinct. I mean, as millennials, we have to deal with job switching every 5 years pretty much because a lot of people have to work temp jobs. That is just not the reality anymore. So we need to take care of ourselves instead of waiting for the company to take care of us. So this is why I believe that the standard narrative doesn't make sense and doesn't apply. We have to throw out that outdated advice and basically write a new rule book.
So what caused the rift in opinions with our parents? Economic challenges such as the Great Recession have heavily influenced millennial values. We hold about 4% of the U.S. wealth, far less than baby boomers at the same age, according to the 2019 Federal Reserve Report. The financial instability has led them to delay milestones like homeownership, marriage, and childbearing, prioritizing career stability and personal growth. The U.S. Census Bureau reports that millennial homeownership is 8% lower than the previous generations at the same age. I'm just going to give you guys an example of how I handled Jonathan's family when they questioned me in my career and what I was up to. And I sat down with his brother, who is also a teacher. He taught middle school band. And I told him everything that I had done to prepare for my career. And he was shocked that I wasn't more successful and that I wasn't doing extremely well. And I said, well, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and this happened. Now, he was a union rep for the school district, and he was in a district right next door to mine in Washington State. And so he didn't believe anything I was coming out of my mouth. He goes, there's no way that all of those things are gone. There's no way they got rid of all of those things. There's no way that they could get there's no way. And I said, look it up. And he did. And about a day later, he came back to me and I said, so what did you find out? And he goes, I don't want to talk about it. It's going to make me really, really angry. And I go, okay. And then he dropped it. So if you have a boomer in your life that is struggling to understand where you're coming from and you're a millennial, show them our channel. Give them some stats. Ask them to do a little bit of research. And you'll find that a lot of people will come around and see the voice of reason. And if they don't, then that's on them. So what's another challenge that millennials are going through, Jonathan?
Climate change is a major concern for millennials and all of us. Shaping their values around sustainability, a 2020 Pew Research survey found that 76% of millennials believe protecting the environment should be a top priority. This concern influences their consumer behavior, with 73% willing to spend more on sustainable products, according to a 2018 Nielsen report.
Millennials are also driving the demand for corporate and social responsibility, with 83% believing that businesses should address social and environmental issues, as reported by the Cone Communications in 2017. Their moral compass is shaped by social justice, environmental stability, and economic fairness, leading them to seek out brands and employers that align with their values.
In summary, millennials are defined by their progressive outlook, shaped by economic instability and a focus on sustainability and social responsibility. Their global perspective and desire for ethical practices make them more likely to challenge traditional institutions, pushing for inclusivity and justice in all areas of life. Gen Z, born between 1997 and 2012, is the first fully digital native generation. They've grown up with smartphones, social media, and instant access to information. This constant connectivity has shaped them into the most tech-savvy generation yet, with a strong emphasis on social consciousness, mental health, equality, and environmental activism. Take a look.
Let's check my boomer clock. Oh, hello. I'm so glad you could make it on time.
You're welcome.
So tell me why you want this job.
I don't. And in fact, I wanted to discuss your starting salary.
Is it not acceptable to you?
Honestly, no. Right now it is at least $1,500 for a studio. I need to make 3 times that amount to qualify, so your starting salary should reflect that. For what you're offering, I'm happy to work part-time and remotely from home.
I'm sorry, this isn't a negotiation.
Oh, excuse me. I didn't see the line outside for this position. So tell me why I should accept this job.
You know what? I'm sick of this shit. We got several Gen Z employees here, and you are all the same. You arrive late,
You gave me street park.
reject assignments.
Why wouldn't I want to work on something I'm passionate about?
Avoid picking up phone calls.
It's not office hours.
Your generation is lazy, entitled, hooked on the instant gratification of technology, and live way beyond your means.
Excuse me? Our eyes are wide open to the bleak financial landscape that the older generations refuse to acknowledge.
Are you kidding me?
Here's some facts. Rising costs of living, stagnant wages, housing affordability crisis.
So let's look at how Gen Z is shaking things up. A 2021 Pew Research report shows that 70% of Gen Zers view climate change as a major threat, higher than any other previous generation. They are actively involved in social issues, with nearly 50% participating in activist movements, according to a 2020 Deloitte study. Mental health is also a key concern, with 37% seeking treatment, which we found interesting. This reflects their openness about these issues and their demand for institutional support.
However, the generation's awareness comes with a dose of cynicism. Growing up during times of political division and economic uncertainty, including the Great Recession and the COVID-19 pandemic, has made them skeptical of traditional institutions and authority. This skepticism includes homeownership and marriage. A 2021 Bank of America study found only 43% of Gen Zers believe they will own a home, and many are delaying or foregoing marriage, prioritizing social impact instead. Take a look.
I'm reminded of a quote by Sinead O'Connor, who once said that it is no measure of health to be well adjusted in a profoundly sick society. I think this is what Gen Z means when they use the term be delusional. It's not that we have irrational beliefs about reality. It's more that we refuse to accept that this is the reality that we have to put up with for the rest of our lives. This isn't livable anymore. And the societal dysfunction is starting to spread everywhere. It's becoming a prevalent issue. And a lot of this dread is actually caused by how many of us are starting to lose faith in the future, because our point of reference for a good life is still dependent on the realities of previous generations, whose circumstances are nowhere near what we're experiencing right now.
Gen Z is redefining success to focus on values over wealth, with 60% saying job alignment with personal values is more important than a high-paying salary, according to a 2019 Morning Consult survey. They are also the most diverse generation, with nearly half identifying as a racial or ethnic minority, driving their inclusive attitudes towards race, gender, and sexuality. They show strong support for movements like the Black Lives Matter and Me Too movements, and they're much more progressive than the previous generations, though they do prefer to support causes that align with their opinions rather than just political parties.
Mm-hmm. So in summary, Gen Z's values are shaped by their digital upbringing and experiences with economic and political instability. They prioritize mental health, social impact, and equality, and are likely to bring significant cultural shifts as they continue to influence society. Generation Alpha, born from 2013 onwards, is set to be the most tech-savvy generation. Raised by Millennials and older Gen Z parents, they're expected to adopt progressive values, focusing on inclusivity, sustainability, and global awareness. By 2025, Gen Alpha is projected to reach over 2 billion globally, making them the largest generation in history.
So growing up in a world dominated by technology, they are digital natives from birth. According to a 2022 Common Sense Media study, 67% of children under 8 have access to a tablet or what we call an iPad at home. This signals that early immersion is happening in the digital world. And this early exposure is likely to shape their learning styles, communication, and social interactions, making them adept at navigating virtual environments. Unfortunately, we're finding that this technology immersion is already showing consequences. Take a look.
Welcome to the age of iPad kids. Gen Z, we're told, is terrified by the prospect of raising a generation of children who are slaves to their iPads. The term iPad kids is commonly used to describe children who are raised without any restrictions on their screen time. And the topic, ironically enough, gained significant traction on TikTok amongst TikTok kids. There is now a whole genre of TikTok videos that have garnered millions of views, where users openly criticize and ridicule the behaviors of iPad kids, throwing tantrums when the devices are taken away, displaying a complete disinterest in engaging with others, lacking the ability to play with traditional toys, etc. But behind all the sarcasm and dark humor lies a whole host of uncomfortable truths about where our society is going. The kids of today are bad, but the kids of tomorrow will be living a life we can't even think of. Generation Alpha is something we don't want to think about. But what's actually going to happen to these kids in the future? But to understand what's going to happen and why iPad kids is such a terrifying phenomena, we need to look at how things were a few decades ago.
In summary, Gen Alpha is set to be a tech-savvy, globally aware generation with cultural values shaped by their progressive Millennial and Gen Z parents and an ever-evolving digital landscape. Unfortunately, we're also seeing higher incidences of violence happening in Gen Alpha. 1 in 5 children in Gen Alpha are exhibiting these traits. Take a look.
What's your assessment of these sort of different generations? We have these Gen Zs, Millennials, and we have the Boomers. What's your read on these?
Well, we've given up on the children. The future is not the children. The children are no longer the future. The future is AI. The future is robotics. We're very clear on that. We don't even talk about the children anymore. We talk mainly about AI. No one's even said anything about the children in months, years, really. We've given up on the children. They're dead-eyed little monsters. They're running around killing each other. We can't deal with it. It's very traumatic. I've even stopped thinking about what they're doing because it's crazy. I'm more excited about AI than the children, just like anyone else. Who's reviving the economy of San Francisco? The children? No, AI. So AI is next. We don't know what we're going to do with the children. Build prisons. That's what I say for children. They're crazy. They're being raised by algorithms. They're all on fentanyl. They're all on drugs. They're all running around trying to kill each other and record it. There was a case in Phoenix, Arizona. These rich white kids running around, beating up kids at random, filming it and putting it on TikTok. No motive, nothing. Just for clout, just for things. Psych. And they killed a kid. And finally, now because they're all white, of course, the cops didn't do anything for a year. And they were like, wow, just a couple of kids having fun killing the other kids. This is how people grow up. So this Gilbert, Arizona Police Department does nothing about the whole thing. Finally, they just arrested these kids because they killed somebody. But this is not only there. I mean, it's kind of an epidemic where like, all over the place, you see like, young people, unfortunately, these crazy acts of violence that are now being uploaded for clout.
Now, unfortunately, Gen Alpha is not getting the best parenting as we're seeing a huge spike in not just violence, but retail crimes in our area. Take a look.
It's like an organized family, crime using children to make money for themselves. Now women were sort of talk to them or ask questions and sort of distract while the kids were like ripping packages open and like just.
So apparently the reason thieves think this is a successful tactic to use is because they don't look like your typical shoplifters. Here they are, they enter a store, they're a big family, they're fairly conspicuous. Store security doesn't see some guy wearing a mask, carrying a burlap sack walk in, so they're going to be treated differently. They can enter the store, they can try stuff on, they have a lot of autonomy when they move around as a big group, and because they're not perceived as a threat, they've got the ability to make off with way more stuff than somebody whose security is actively monitoring. Plus, with a stroller and all the other stuff you need to take care of your kids when you're out and about, they've got extra bags. They've got something that's kind of like a shopping cart almost that they could fill up with merchandise and then just roll pull right out of the store. They may even have other shopping bags from other stores with them. It might look like they're on a shopping trip, but really it's a shoplifting trip.
Now, if you're new to this concept, our city's approach to managing petty theft is very much like New York's, and we live in the Seattle area, and it's causing major problems for local businesses and communities. By effectively decriminalizing theft under a certain amount, we're sending the wrong message to our youth, implying that stealing is now acceptable. The policy is similar to, like I said, those cities in New York, and it puts store owners under significant pressure, and those caught stealing are often quickly released and likely to reoffend. Now, as a formal jewelry store owner, I've seen firsthand how this issue goes beyond shoplifting. It harms businesses, it erodes a lot of community trust, and it fuels ongoing crime. And it's crucial that we rethink these policies for the safety and well-being of our community. So let's get into how BRICS is going to affect us in the future. The BRICS nations, comprised of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are rapidly growing in economic and geopolitical influence, challenging the cultural dominance of the West. Collectively, these countries represent 40% of the world's population and nearly a quarter of the GDP, according to the International Monetary Fund. As their economies expand, so does their cultural reach, potentially leading to a shift in our global values. If you're new to the BRICS organization, here's a breakdown. Take a look.
The group of emerging economies known as BRICS makes up more than 40% of the world's population and a quarter of the global economy. And more countries want to join the club, which aims to challenge a world order seen to be dominated by the US and its Western allies. But what exactly is BRICS? Who wants in? And why? Underscoring the growth potential of Brazil, Russia, India, and China, a chief economist at Goldman Sachs came up with the BRIC acronym in 2001. The group was founded as an informal club in 2009. Its creation initiated by Russia. South Africa joined the following year. It's the smallest member in terms of economic clout and population. BRICS is not a formal multilateral organization like the UN or World Bank. Its leaders usually get together annually, with each nation rotating through a one-year chairmanship of the group. The bloc operates by consensus. Apart from geopolitics, the group's focus includes economic cooperation and increasing multilateral trade and development. And that's attracting others. This year's chair, South Africa, says over 40 countries have expressed interest in joining. Iran has said it hopes the club will pin down the new membership process as soon as possible. Oil heavyweight Saudi Arabia has the backing of Russia and Brazil, and Argentina says it has China's support. One of Africa's fastest growing economies, Ethiopia, says it's asked to join. Bolivia appears interested too. In July, the country turned to the Chinese yuan, saying it wanted to curb dependence on the US dollar for foreign trade. That move aligns with BRICS' stated aim. The same month, Algeria said it applied for membership and to become a shareholder in the so-called BRICS Bank, or New Development Bank.
Unlike the individualism seen in Western cultures, BRICS countries emphasize community and social stability. China and Russia, for example, prioritize state authority and social harmony over personal freedom, while India and Brazil hold on to traditional family values which influence their views on gender roles and LGBTQ+ rights.
And with the rise of BRICS, there's a potential for conflict between these value systems and those of the West. Project 2025, for example, could exacerbate these tensions if it's implemented on a state or federal level after the next election. Take a look.
All right. Y'all remember this big old book from before? When Colorado Governor Jerry Polis ripped the page out of it? This is Project 2025, the Republican blueprint for a second Trump term. It is a, boo. You ever seen a document that could kill a small animal and democracy at the same time? Here it is. You know how when you download an app and there are hundreds of pages there that you don't read, it's just the terms and conditions, and you just click agree, right? Well, these are the terms and conditions of a second Trump presidency. You vote for him, you vote for all of this. Let's take a look.
Project 2025 could lead to significant shifts in policy that might challenge the current cultural and moral values in North America. It's important for us to stay informed and prepared, especially since these changes could affect everything from education to social services.
So let's break down Project 2025. It's a conservative plan aiming to reshape the American government by rolling back progressive policies, reducing federal power, and pushing traditional values on all levels of government. The plan is driven by conservative think tanks and led by the Heritage Foundation, with the goal of transforming our federal agencies, cutting regulations, and reducing the size of government.
So which generations and communities are likely to support it? Baby boomers and the silent generation may support Project 2025 because it aligns with their traditional values and desire for a return to conservative government. Rural communities and religious conservatives are likely to embrace the project, seeing it as a defense against what they view as the decline of traditional American values. That said, let's look at the leader of Project 25, John McEntee, showing his personal values.
Now, it's worth noting that McEntee also has kind of a side hustle as the CEO of a right-wing dating app known as The Right Stuff.
So I'm not allowed to use glue traps on mice, but you're allowed to have multiple abortions? I was watching TV yesterday, which I usually don't do, and I noticed something with the commercials. When did everyone in America become black and gay? If white people are so awful, why do you keep moving to their neighborhoods? We live in a world where a kid can't pretend to be an Indian, but a grown man can pretend to be a woman? Do you really think handing over your gun ends gun violence? That's like chopping off your own to stop rape.
Well, he seems nice. I don't know about you, but that guy's probably the last person I would trust to hire anyone.
So now that we've seen the leader of the Heritage Foundation, let's look into the generations and communities that are likely to revolt. Millennials and Gen Zers, we're predominantly progressive. Our generation are likely to resist this project because we see it as a threat to our most basic civil liberties, social justice, education, living wages, environmental protections. Those are all important to us. Urban populations and diverse communities are expected to push back against the project as well because they fear the rollback of hard-fought rights and the marginalization of minority groups. So if Project 2025 leads to significant curtailment of our rights, income inequality, and suppression of dissent, it could spark civil unrest, potentially escalating into a civil war. Now, we saw a huge spike in crime and violence in the Seattle area during COVID, and now we're dealing with open drug use. So when these structures come in, it's not good. And on a global scale, a shift toward authoritarianism in America could strain international relations, especially with our democratic allies, while potentially provoking conflicts with nations aligned with Western democratic values.
So does Project 2025 reflect the true values of today's Americans? The project is divisive. Support is largely confined to conservative factions. It does not represent the values of the majority of Americans, especially the younger, more diverse generations. The values embedded in Project 2025 are more reflective of a bygone era rather than the evolving moral and cultural landscape of modern America. Because of this, it's likely to trigger a great American revolt. Take a look.
Project 2025 wants states to be able to ignore these basic and long-held guarantees. Forget about undoing Roe or even the civil rights movement before that. The architects of this document want to take us back even further. They basically want to undo the New Deal, but they don't want you to be able to tell that that's what they're doing, so they're hiding the ball in the hope that you won't read it at all. But even if you do read it, like my team has, you won't realize that Project 2025 wants to eliminate basic workers' rights that lifted America out of child labor and the sweatshop era. And as we covered last week, this book also plans to create taxes, raise taxes for millions of Americans. So when you pair that with the anti-worker policy that plans that are in this particular chapter, chapter 18, what you have is an all-out assault on the working class.
So let's look at what Project 2025 is going to do to our middle class. With the middle class already on its way to extinction, this project could further exacerbate economic inequality, stripping away protections and benefits for the working class. One economist said that union representatives will no longer rely on laws like basic minimum wage, and said that companies could start negotiations as low as 10 cents an hour if they wanted to. The project's focus is total deregulation and reducing government intervention, and it leads to increased corporate power, potentially harming workers' rights and creating further economic insecurity.
Now let's dive into our personal opinions. Michelle, how have your values changed over the years?
Well, growing up, I was always taught the importance of extremely hard work and an A+ education. But as I've aged, I've also come to value things like mental health, self-analysis, and varying spiritual philosophies, things that were not emphasized in my household. How about you, honey?
Well, for me, it's been a journey of understanding. As a boomer, I grew up with a certain set of values that were very black and white, but through the years and because of my experiences, I've worked in more diverse environments than most 19 typical white guys.
1950s white guys, yeah.
I've learned the importance of flexibility and empathy. My moral compass has expanded to include a more nuanced understanding of right and wrong.
This has been such an insightful discussion. Cultural and moral values are always evolving, and it's fascinating to see how each generation shapes and reshapes what we all consider to be important.
Absolutely. The key takeaway here is that while our values may change, the conversations around them are what help us grow as a society. We need to stay engaged, informed, and open to the change that is coming.
Thank you so much for joining us on our journey through the generations. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, as we are a new channel, and we would love to hear your thoughts. How have your values changed over the years? Please leave a comment below.
Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep growing. Please join us in bridging the generational gaps, one conversation at a time. See you in the next episode.
Take care, everyone.